welcome Andrea Rene to
Thank
the
you.
editorial report.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I bumped into you at all sorts of fun times during our tour through Comic-Con 2014 this year.
Yes, we did see each other quite a bit.
One thing I didn't check out, though, was anything Mass Effect. And so you visited the Mass Effect panel, and I got to admit, I kind of get frustrated when we're excited about something, but it's tough to assign it a headline because we have no title, we don't really know what it's about. So what do we know about the new Mass Effect?
Well, that's a very fair point, and a lot of people have been reaching out to me on Twitter to say, oh, this isn't really news, they're just talking about conceptual stuff, which is, EA got pegged really hard for that over their whole E3 presentation, so this is really no different. But as a huge Mass Effect fan, any little tidbit of information I grabbed onto, and so they did actually talk about a substantial amount of things. Granted, they did have the disclaimer that said this could completely change, but for the final version, it's still very conceptual. The game is years away, which is the big takeaway for a lot of fans, knowing that we have to wait years for the game to come out. I mean, I think that means like at the earliest, we're talking like fall 2016 release, but it could be even like early 2017.
For a potentially really huge game, though.
Yes.
So it's not, again, it's not like something like, Last Guardian or something where it's just like, what the heck is taking so long? Like, you can imagine why, that they have this whole new generation to play with, that hopefully people will be patient enough. But what are you really excited about? What were the big announcements?
So they show some armor, both for the female version and the male version of the hero, talking about how customization of armor is going to be coming back into Mass Effect, and they're taking it even further than what we saw in Mass Effect 3, making even smaller individual pieces customizable, incorporating under armor elements that will help, boost your overall stats for your character. They did say that the protagonist will be a human character, which I know some Mass Effect fans were a little disappointed about. They didn't mention specifically other playable alien races, but they did say other alien races will be in your squad again, which we saw through all the Mass Effect games, which was exciting. They weren't giving up any story details whatsoever. One of the fan questions at the panel was where in the timeline in relationship to the trilogy will this new Mass Effect be set? Question a lot of people want to know. And they didn't give a specific answer. Instead, it was very cryptic. Producer Mike Gamble was talking about it and said that, Shepard may be referenced, but you're not playing as Shepard. So based off what he was talking about, it sounded like it may be set sometime during Shepard's lifetime. But again, it's hard to report on anything because we don't have any concrete answers. Because I don't think the team itself knows.
Let's speculate. What do you want? Now, I've dabbled in Mass Effect, but it's one of those, it's like with role-playing games, really good role-playing games, you have to pick and choose. You can't play absolutely everything because these are giant games to get through.
Yeah.
So I've never really taken the time, which is a travesty for myself personally.
It is.
I need
you
to
should
do
go
that.
back and play.
So what do you want? What do you, if it is an offshoot, if it's not Mass Effect 4, what would be fun? What do you think? Where were the holes in the story, or where do you think it was going?
I think that there's a lot of room for origin story, like pre-Commander Shepard, before the Commander, whoever your Shepard was, joined with the Alliance. I think there's lots of other stories to tell on different planets with different races, talking about, the intergalactic wars that were happening and things like that. Actually, one of the fans asked if it was going to go outside the Milky Way, because Mass Effect set inside the Milky Way, going, are we going to travel to these other places? And of course, they were like, we can't talk about that yet. But I personally would like to see stories from the Asari, because they were my favorite race in Mass Effect, and I know everyone has their own favorite race, but those were mine. And they have really long lifespans that last a couple of hundred years, so I think that we could really see a franchise set just in their world and in their community. So that's where I personally would like to see. Liara was one of my favorite characters in the whole franchise next to Femshep.
Well, franchise is an interesting, a new franchise is an interesting thing to talk about. Do you think this is something that's going to be kind of their stepping stone into a new generation? They're going to make like one last Mass Effect game, and then they'll move on to something else, kind of like Uncharted 4. They're like, okay, we'll just do one more Uncharted, and then we're done with Uncharted. We're going to do something else. Or do you think this is the beginning of a new trilogy or the beginning of a new era for Mass Effect?
I think it definitely is the beginning of a new era. They wouldn't be putting this many years into the development of the game if they were intending to make just one more and then call it quits.
Sure.
Right? I think that the team is thinking about how rich and diverse the lore is of Mass Effect and how far it reaches and how many different races and different characters and different storylines and different planets. they could incorporate. And they said in the panel that exploration was a really big emphasis for them, which is why they debuted the new Mako.
I saw that tweet, yeah.
Yeah, so the Mako is back, and I think the audience is kind of split 50-50 of people who love the Mako and are so glad it's back, and others who are like, damn that Mako, I hate that thing.
So back meaning, again, for me, a Mass Effect noob was just in the first one. So
Yeah.
I remember a friend showing it to me, and they were like, jumping off mountains.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
stuff
There
like
was
that.
like a whole DLC pack with just Mako missions.
But it is funny because I remember having friends, like I'd have one guy in one ear being like, "Isn't this cool? You can go down to this planet and you can check it out, and you have to like drive to your location." And like another friend was like, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen." It's like, just get me to that place. Why am I doing it? It's like Wind Waker. A lot of people were like, "This map is too huge," and I was like, "I could sail that boat for hours. It doesn't matter. It's just fun to like explore that world."
Yeah, well, and that's what's really exciting for me as a Mass Effect fan, the idea that we get to take this new, retooled Mako and go explore some of these planets, because even though Mass Effect did have a lot of different locations, your experience in each of those locations was pretty linear. It's not like you got to go off and explore the world, and having the idea of exploration really be a big emphasis in the next Mass Effect. It's really exciting for me as a player. And they really said at the panel they wanted to make sure everyone knew, we've heard all the feedback. We understand that it was a really terrible design-wise way of, getting around, and we've, really redesigned it from the ground up to be something that's really fun to drive, and going to be adding customizable options as well.
Oh, cool. So you've mentioned, obviously, you were excited to see this because you said before, like, any news that you get on Mass Effect is great. One final question. From a business standpoint, do you think something like this could potentially backfire? Like you were talking about with EA is kind of getting flack for like Battlefront showing up and being like, "Hi, we're at our desks having fun with stormtroopers," and you're like, "Great,
exactly.
it's not
Same with
necessarily
Mirror's
E3
Edge.
material." Are you cool with that? Do you? I mean, like obviously you said you were because you were a fan, but like again, is because that's something that could potentially backfire or just be the wrong kind of press, especially if the game takes a long time to develop. You think back, like, God, we first started hearing about this 2-3 years ago, and we still haven't played this game. Any negativity there potentially?
I think with this kind of a franchise, the core audience who's going to be buying this game is okay that it's going to take a long time. All of the feedback that I've seen on the Mass Effect coverage that we have done, the little of it that's out there, is that I'm okay with waiting, because you see franchises like Call of Duty that get so much flack for being a yearly franchise. And same with Assassin's Creed, being like, oh, they're just slapping these things together every year, despite the fact that there's different development teams working several years on them.
Right.
It's the
And they're all
illusion that that they're kind of like just throwing it together in a year and putting it out. Bioware has always had like one specific team really working on Mass Effect, and now they're working with Bioware Edmonton in addition to the Montreal studio to work together to create this Mass Effect. And I think that it's good that they're taking their time with it. Get it done right. After all of the hoopla over the ending of Mass Effect 3, make sure that you're doing right by the fans and really recreating this universe in a way that's going to be meaningful and immersive. So
but specifically,
I can wait.
Yeah.
I can wait.
But not necessarily the waiting time, but specifically them showing up at Comic-Con as opposed to being like, let's just sit this one out because we don't really have that much new stuff to show. Do you think it was enough to present at Comic-Con?
I mean, as a fan, yeah, because that's what Comic-Con is about.
Right.
E3, all news, all business. Comic-Con is really about fan service, and we see that not just with video games, but with the TV and movies that are there as well. Everything being about the fans, like the whole Hall H experience, how like press doesn't get preferential access because it's really all about connecting with the people that love your IP.
So were there people cosplaying as Mass Effect characters just a little bit?
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of them, but there were some. Yeah, I saw
definitely
a
saw
really
more
amazing
Spartans
femship.
Oh, yeah?
So, yeah, she was at the panel. She was a couple seats down from me. Her armor looked amazing.
Yeah, they have to have like bigger chairs or something for some of those panels.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And you saw some more stuff that we can talk about at a later date. But thank you for coming in to chat about it.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.